Ladies and gentlemen, do you ever wonder what it would be like to owe your life to somebody that you barely know? Think about it. How strange would that feel? On January 15th, 1975, my sister and I were born in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, during a time when war raged between the government forces and a radical communist group called Khmer Rouge. Now, how many people in this room have watched the movie The Killing Fields? So you know that between 1975 and 1978, the Khmer Rouge killed over 1 million people. At this time, the fighting raged through the countryside, driving thousands of civilians to Phnom Penh. My mother was among those desperate families seeking refuge after my father was killed. Well, she made it to Phnom Penh, and she gave birth to my sister and I, but she was so sick that she could no longer feed us. We were found abandoned on a pile of dirty rags in a hut. So we were taken to an orphanage called the Canada House. Now this orphanage was run by 2 very young Canadian sisters. Anna Sheree was only 19, Dolly was 21. At the peak, this orphanage had 43 babies, abandoned or brought there by mothers who had no other option but to bring them, could no longer feed them or take care of them. Here's a picture of all of us in the orphanage. Anna and Dolly are here at the very bottom. And as you can see, there's also a lot of Cambodian staff as well. These sisters were so young, so idealistic, yet so determined to help as many children as possible. And there's my sister and I are actually down here at the very bottom. It's very blurry, it didn't come out very well, sorry. So each child was actually matched with parents in North America. Parents that were so eager to open up their family to Cambodian children, and they watched the war as it progressed. The adoption agency was actually called Families for Children, and was led by this amazing young Canadian woman by the name of Naomi Bronstein. She actually had already found our future Canadian family, who already had 4 biological children of their own. But when they saw what was happening in Cambodia, they decided to adopt. And thankfully for my sister and I, they were happy to accept twins. So back in Cambodia at this time, the fighting just intensified, and the Western government was urging all citizens to get out of the country because it was only a matter of time before the government fell. The Canadian officials actually begged Anna and Dolly to leave the country on the last evacuation flights, but they refused. Why? Because on those evacuation flights, there was no room for 43 orphan babies. They declared, if we cannot take these children, we are not leaving. The last evacuation flight left Phnom Penh in mid-March. By this time, the Khmer Rouge were 16 kilometers away from the city. Artillery rockets and rocket fire bombarded the city, and Anna and Dolly found themselves nightly huddled underneath the house, trying to calm 43 screaming babies. We had to get out, and quickly. The Khmer Rouge were already legendary. Their brutality, they were massacring entire villages. They're desperate to try and figure out a way to get out. Meanwhile, in Saigon, Naomi Bronstein was also trying to figure out a way to get us out. Through sheer determination, she found a pilot willing to fly a cargo plane into Phnom Penh to pick us up. On March 27th, he flew into the Cambodian airport under heavy gunfire and shelling, and managed to land the plane on a tarmac littered with debris. Across town, the government officials lent Anna and Dolly a truck from which they put up white sheets blazing with red crosses. They threw the babies in and left. As we pulled away from the orphanage the Cambodian staff ran behind us, praying and crying, because they knew they would never see us again. We raced across town, pulled up to the airport, and basically screeched to a halt right beside the plane. We loaded the babies in as quickly as possible, and we managed to get out. We made it to Saigon, and from Saigon we went to Hong Kong, and on April 10th we boarded an Air Canada flight to Montreal, where hundreds of families were waiting for these babies, anxiously waiting for their children to arrive. We were placed into our parents' arms. And for my sister and I, that was day one of the rest of our lives. Now, I often think about those three women and what they did and how they managed to get us out of Cambodia. Anna, Dolly, Naomi, they were so young. They were 19 and 21. And Naomi was a little older, she was 29. But what would convince somebody to uproot their comfortable life in Montreal and decide to go to a war-torn country that's being ravaged by violence and danger? Could you do it? Could you stand up right now and go to somewhere like Afghanistan or Syria or Libya to try and save children you don't even know? It takes an extraordinary person to do what they did. And my sister and I, we absolutely are confident without a doubt that if it wasn't for the courage, the compassion, and the determination of these extraordinary women, we would not be here today. So, yes, it is odd and very humbling to feel that you owe your life to the kindness of strangers.